your guard. There are older and fouler things than orcs in the deep places of the world.
Everything out of the ordinary is to be reported.
Fiery the angels fell. Deep thunder rolled around their shores.
It may just be my imagination. Whatever it is that's watching, it's not human.
We are all now programmed for perfect happiness. Perfect happiness. Perfect happiness. Perfect happiness.
Quite an experience to live in fear, isn't it? That's what it is to be a slave.
It's a hard world for little things.
What we do in life echoes in eternity.
You know, there was a time in this country when smart people were considered cool. Well, maybe not cool, but smart people did things like build ships and pyramids, and they even went to the moon.
The Great Conjunction is the end of the world! Oh, the beginning?
It was a church. Do you know that word? Yes, there were still churches when I was a child.
But all things that are exposed are made manifest by the light. For whatever makes manifest is light.
You now belong to God, no longer to the devil.
What you said just now, quite extraordinary.
You're listening to Beyond Extraordinary with Natalina.
Long time no see, you guys. Welcome to a brand spanking new episode of Beyond Extraordinary. Boo. Gosh, it has been a while, hasn't it? Things have been a little wild and crazy here in Natalinaville, but I could never forget about you guys, so I'm super excited for you to be listening to this episode because it is a good one. We'll talk about what it's all about in just a little bit, but there's a lot of cool episodes right around the corner, so if you're not subscribed, listen, man, this is the time you're going to want to go to extraordinaryintelligence.com and subscribe via the RSS feed or via iTunes or Stitcher, and make sure that you don't miss a single episode. Coming up, I've got stuff about, oh my goodness, I've got another installment in my ongoing series about cults. I've got a show coming up that I'm really pumped about UFOs and a secret space program. I've got some awesome testimony shows coming up, and I've also got an interview with a really, really super duper awesome apologist that many of you may know, and you're just not going to want to miss them. So sign up, and while you're at extraordinaryintelligence.com, make sure that you go and straight through to our Facebook page, facebook.com/Beyond Extraordinary Radio, and also you can follow us on Twitter and whatever. All of the links are there on the site. If you'd like to support this ministry, there is a support tab that will lead you to all the places you need to go, or you can purchase an item from Extraordinary Boutique, where I sell all my handmade jewelry. So enough of all of that. So first of all, I'm really, really excited to tell you guys that if you've been a regular listener, you may remember the somewhat short-lived podcast called The Podcast with Diana and Natalina. It was sort of a side project I was doing with my really good girlfriend, Ding Dong, Diana, because it was just something that we felt really passionate about doing, sort of a podcast that was just the two of us, not really an interview show, but more just the two of us talking about current events, art, culture, philosophy, religion, all of that stuff through a Christian lens, and it was really, really a lot of fun. And you know how sometimes life just kind of puts things on the back burner, and that's what happened to us. Various obligations got in the way, but I'm excited to tell you that the podcast with Diana and Natalina is coming back, and I'm talking like fairly soon. It's going to have its own website. It's going to have its own feed. It's going to have its own iTunes location. So you're going to want to stay tuned for all of that, because as soon as it launches, I will let you know, and you'll want to go and follow that. That's the podcast with Diana and Natalina, and I'll give you the URL to the website once it's all set up. And you know, speaking of brand new shows that are actually comeback shows, I don't know if you've heard, but in approximately 10 days from the time that this episode is going to be published, Art Bell, the original host of Coast to Coast AM, has his own new show coming back. He is coming back to radio, which I am really pumped about. I'm such a fan of Art Bell. He is a permanent fixture of my memory bank, and it'll be really exciting to see what he is going to be putting out there. And instead of telling you what the name of this new show is, I'm going to let Crystal Gale tell you.
Midnight in the desert, shooting stars across the sky. This magical journey will take us on a ride.
Yes, that's right. It is Midnight in the Desert with Art Bell. And there's a reason that I'm bringing it up, actually, because the subject of tonight's episode is Father Malachi Martin. And many of you out there, if you're fringy fringertons like me, are aware of Father Malachi Martin first and foremost because of his now legendary series of interviews with none other than Art Bell when he was on Coast to Coast AM. They're just epic interviews that people still, you know, you can go to YouTube and find them and listen to them. And rather than telling you all about Malachi Martin myself, I am going to, just in honor of his new show coming out, and because of the subject matter of this program, I'm going to let Art Bell tell you a little bit about Malachi Martin.
Dr. Malachi Martin, ex-Jesuit, former exorcist, and one-time advisor to 3 popes, is currently a best-selling author. As a premier investigator of clandestine politics and unlikely alliances of popes and cardinals, his novels offer rare insights into the men who guide nearly 1 billion people in faith and broker the destinies of countries and continents. As a member of the Vatican Intelligence Network, I didn't know they had one, Martin helped extend the church into Iron Curtain countries in 1964, concerned about the corrupting influences of power. Martin was released from his vows of poverty and obedience after 25 years as a Jesuit. He left Rome for New York, where he did odd jobs until a Guggenheim Fellowship enabled him to write his first bestseller, Hostage to the Devil. It was followed by the final conclave, Vatican, 3 popes, and the cardinal, the keys of this blood, the Jesuits, and apparently many others. He's a very prolific author. To give you some idea of how he is reviewed, Forbes magazine said, "No spiritual journey is complete without a Vatican page-turner by Malachi Martin." Sacramento Bee said, "It is to Martin's credit that his real-life fictional cardinals have flesh, blood, and bone, sometimes the heart of a South Chicago ward healer." The Dallas Morning News said, "In biblical times, they would have called him a prophet." Publishers Weekly said, "It is impossible not to be impressed with Martin's profound knowledge of men, issues, and history." I could go on and on and on and on. For 30 years, as a Catholic priest, Dr. Martin did exorcisms. So from New York City, staying up late, here is Dr. Malachi Martin. Doctor, welcome to the program.
Well, good morning there, Art. How are you?
Oh, I am very well, and I am so honored to have you here.
No, I'm really privileged to be talking on this vast network. It is really universal.
So obviously Malachi Martin was a much loved figure. He was also very controversial, primarily because of his criticism of the Vatican. He came under a lot of fire for that. He very openly stated that he felt that Rome and the Vatican were apostate, and he was he was so incredibly critical of modern Catholicism, and as a result, he made a lot of friends and he made a lot of enemies, but he was definitely someone who wasn't really afraid to say what he perceived to be the truth. He was also well known for his exorcism ministry. He wrote a book in 1976 called Hostage to the Devil, and the reason this show's title is Hostage to the Devil is because my guest tonight, Marty Stalker, is a filmmaker, and for the past 3+ years, he has been working on a documentary about Malachi Martin, and specifically about the exorcism ministry of Father Martin. It's so fascinating to hear Marty talk about how much work he's put into this. You know, he first came into it just realizing that, you know, for such a big figure, for such a well-known figure, such a polarizing figure as Malachi Martin, it seemed really odd that there was not sort of one film that really took the time, you know, a well-produced, well-made, well-researched film that took the time to really delve into the question of who is who was Malachi Martin, and what was his driving force. So the really cool thing about Marty Stalker is that rather than just doing all of his research on the internet and that kind of thing, he went to people who not just didn't just have opinions about Father Malachi Martin, and not just people who, you know, were fans or foes, but he went and interviewed quite a few people who were actually acquainted with and friends with and intimate friends with the late Father Martin, and those people are going to feature prominently in this upcoming film of his, where the question is going to sort of be centralized around, you know, was Father Martin really truly fighting, you know, the diabolical forces of the devil, or was he, you know, more of a sort of mythicist? Was he crazy? I don't know. You know, it's going to be so fascinating just to see how he presents it, and he gets a lot more into that in this upcoming show. He talks a lot about the filmmaking process. He talks a lot about the various people that he interviewed, including Ralph Sarchie. You probably remember Ralph Sarchie from our interview with him last summer. Ralph, of course, is the former NYPD cop who became a demonologist, and they made a major motion picture about him last summer called Deliver Us from Evil, and I managed to interview him right around the time that film came out, which was a real treat for me. Ralph Sarchie was very, very good friends with Father Malachi Martin and worked fairly closely with him, so it is great that Marty was able to sit down and talk to Ralph, as well as people like John Zaffis, and John Zaffis too worked very closely with Malachi Martin. John Zaffis, of course, is known for a lot of his research into the paranormal. He's had a number of shows on the Sci-Fi Network and elsewhere. So all of this, and then people that you may not necessarily have heard of, but who really had inside information or an inside view as to the real true man behind sort of this mythical figure of Malachi Martin, and ultimately that it's going to culminate in a full feature-length documentary that is going to have a theatrical release. So it's been a very huge treat to be able to talk to Marty about this film, and I'm just going to go ahead and stop wasting time and let you listen to the interview yourself. There is a little bit of a weird audio anomaly throughout when Marty is talking, and I didn't really hear it when I was interviewing him, but I can hear it on the recording, and it was just kind of impossible to extract that audio. But I think what it is sometimes when men have when they're wearing microphones, and they have some stubbles on their face, the microphone sort of rubs against the stubble and makes kind of like this noise, and so I think that's what you're hearing. It's not to the point of being distracting, in my opinion, but that's what that noise is. So, and then finally, I just want to say, thank you all so much for sticking with me. I love you all so much. I have been so incredibly blessed by all of you. I have been receiving some amazing emails from so many of you. I just wanted to mention to one person, because I haven't had the time to email him back yet, but and I'm not going to say his full name, but Josh, I read your email, and probably by the time you hear this, you'll have hopefully received a reply from me. But Josh in Florida, you sent me one of the nicest, kindest, most touching emails I have received in a very, very long time. And I want you to know that when you said in the email that you've been feeling kind of lonely and that listening to the show made you feel like you had a friend, well, I just want you to know that I am your friend. And I'm praying for you. And thank you for taking the time to write to me with just your incredibly kind words. And thank you to all of you who take the time to write to me. I read every single thing. I try so hard to reply. Sometimes it takes me a while, but you have no idea how much all of this means to me. And my cup just runneth over. So with all of that said, here is the interview with Marty Stalker about his upcoming film, Hostage to the Devil, about Malachi Martin. Struggle between good and evil, light and darkness, purity and depravity. It's an age-old struggle that man has sought to understand and ultimately overcome. Most cultures embrace some semblance of an evil and good duality, but often such discussions are relegated to the philosophical and ephemeral, rarely reaching into our material and practical everyday lives. However, for some, the battle is not merely an abstract concept, but a very real war that is waged against powers and entities that would settle for nothing less than our very souls. One man who took the matter of demonic possession very seriously was the late Father Malachi Martin. For many students of the supernatural, Father Martin is a mythical figure, one who wrote books and whose distinct voice could be heard via late-night radio. For others, he was a friend, a mentor, and a confidant, and of course, for the demonic, he was an enemy. TV and film director Martin Stalker has taken on the task of examining the life and ministry of Malachi Martin in his forthcoming documentary, Hostage to the Devil. With access to a variety of personal acquaintances and friends from Malachi Martin's life, this film will certainly be a fascinating look at the nature of the battles against the powers and principalities that were warned about in Ephesians, and specifically the work of one man who devoted his life to exposing them. I am very, very pleased to welcome Marty Stalker to Beyond Extraordinary to discuss this film. Marty, thank you so much for joining me today.
No problem at all. It's good to be on and good to be finally talking about the project once and for all, so it's great.
Well, you were just telling me before we got started here that you've been working on this for 3 years.
Yeah, so, I mean, it's when the film actually, hopefully, when it gets into festivals and starts the festival run, it's going to be close to 4 years, to be specific. So it was a project that I mean, 3+ years ago when I got handed the opportunity, and I got handed the paperwork to trawl through. My first reaction was, wow, why hasn't there been anything else done about this man? Why are we the first to be doing something about this man when he died in in the late 90s? So my first reaction was I was amazed that nobody had done anything from a visual point of view, from a TV or film point of view about this man, and his life is fascinating, as a lot of your listeners will know. So I wanted to do the story justice. The story's changed. The story's, I mean, with documentary work, it's a very organic process. So you've got, 3 years ago, I had an idea of where I was going to go with the film, and 3 years on, it's in a totally different place. That's just how it works with documentary. When you go out and you phone people, you meet people who knew Father Martin, and you meet people who were critical of Father Martin, and the story starts to, it's an organic process. So it's always changing. It's always, So I wanted to basically do it justice. do the film justice and tell this man's story. And don't get me wrong, I'm not going to tell the whole of the man's story because that's going to be impossible in 90 minutes. But yeah, so it's taken me a while to get it right and to do the story justice, really.
Well, I would imagine that with documentary filmmaking specifically, if you don't allow the process to sort of unfold organically as you interview new people and this type of thing, then you're sort of directing the narrative and it becomes less of a documentary and more of, pushing your own sort of agenda. Yeah,
totally. I mean, I spoke to it's amazing how many critics are out there, and one thing you learn very fast when you're making something which is as factual as you can make it is you've got to stay away from the internet forums. You've got to stay away from the YouTube comments and the Wikipedia comments and data, etc. You've got to speak to real people on the telephone. You've got to speak to real people face to face. And I was amazed by the amount of critics that Father Martin had. And it's the question when I asked them over the telephone or face to face was, when did you meet Father Martin? I mean, can you tell me, when your first encounter with Father Martin? And 10 times out of 10, it was, oh no, I never met the man. But I was like, how can you have such a strong reaction to another human being when you never even met the man? And then so gradually over the 3 years, I started to interview and to meet and to get really, really close to a lot of the people that Father Martin, had a positive effect in their lives. And I started to really, without spoiling the narrative of the film, but people were coming out and people were making the effort to come out and talk to me on camera. And sometimes, a lot of people are scared by cameras, but people were like, we need to tell this story because there's a lot of rumors and you know what the internet's like. It's rumorville and rumors spread fast and it's all Chinese whispers. And there was people who were coming out of the woodwork who knew Malachi, and we had evidence of photographic evidence of Malachi being with these people, and wanted to do the story justice with myself because you can only go you can't go far on the internet. But I just wanted to do the story justice, and these people were willing to come forward and to talk about the Malachi that they knew, because every person that Malachi knew had different stories about the man. They knew something different about the man, and he had a lot of friends, but he also kept his friendship groups quite close as well. So some of the friends didn't meet other friends. He sort of kept. He was quite, I wouldn't say clever, but he just kept his friendship groups quite close, and it was incredible. The 3+ years on the project. It's and again, that's from a documentary point of view. That's important to meet people, not rely on internet forums, not rely on emails from people who, say they've met the man but they haven't. But that was important for me, and again, like I said before, the story has totally changed from 3 years ago. It's for the better, I must say.
Right. I think that's great, because I find that a lot of what passes as documentary film now is very much and I don't mean to boil it down to just such a basic level, but it does seem that sometimes the filmmaker gets this idea that they want to make a film about something, and then they delve into whatever the internet can regurgitate to them, and it becomes something where it's sort of this dispassionate disconnection between the subject of the film and the director, and when you're actually talking to people who knew the subject of the film, at least you're getting a little bit more of an intimacy with that topic. You can become a little bit more involved, and I imagine that this method comes from the fact that you are a professional director. And before we really delve into the subject matter of this, I want to know more about you and kind of what your path as far as becoming a film director, and just a little bit about your background. If you could just tell us about that, I think that would be really interesting.
Yeah, so I come from a military background, and a lot of people, it's quite a jump, quite a different jump. So I come from a military and also a teaching background, and I say this to a lot of young filmmakers, particularly over here in Ireland, who ask me, they're asking me questions which I feel quite awkward answering, because this is my first feature-length project, and they're asking me questions about, how did you get there? And everyone's path to, and I'm not going to say the word success, but everyone's path to a professional career is different. Everyone's got a unique path. Mm-hmm. And for me, it was more about learning life experiences, seeing things and experiencing things, which made me the director I am today. I would never have got that from going straight into the industry, for example. So all my experiences in the military, going overseas, in different theatres of war, and also my experiences as a teacher, a high school teacher, has given me the skills which you can't learn in a film school, for example. So that's my background. I've come from a military and teaching background, and what the military has taught me is to be prepared, is to be organised, is to get the best out of all your heads of departments. The transition from military to film industry has been extremely smooth, because it's exactly the same. It's quite strange to talk about this, but it is. The military, you've got chains of command, you've got heads of departments. You've all got, you're in stressful situations. You've got to hit targets and objectives, and the transition's been incredible. It's so smooth for me. It's, I've got to motivate people people have got to be working at their best, and the only way to do that is to motivate them and to have a positive working environment. So, in a nutshell, so my military and my teaching experiences has got me where I am now. So when I came over to Ireland in 2000, I married an Irish girl, and we came over in 2008. I gave myself a sort of 10-year plan to, I'm going to give myself 10 years doing this. A lot of my friends thought I was quite crazy, but I gave myself 10 years, and at the moment, the way things are going, when the film gets released, I would have done it in 7 years. So I'm within my target, which is great. I mean, you ask somebody now, ask a film graduate now, can you wait 10 years, to make it? They'll say, no way, I'm going to get at least a normal job. So obviously it's been quite stressful on my family and my wife and my children and stuff. But that is the nature of the beast. It's something which has always been in my blood, filmmaking. Even as a child, I've been obsessed with film and, worked in a video shop and all those cliche sort of, backstories. But, it's my life experiences which has got me here now, and I am the director I am now because of what I've experienced in the past. So, everything's sort of fallen into place. It's been quite incredible, but, a lot of hard work, a lot of sacrifices, a lot of, late nights, but, that's the nature of the beast, as we say.
Sure. Well, I think that's a really great perspective because, there's a lot of people out there. I can even look to my own experience because, I've been at what I'm doing for probably about 7 years now.
Yeah.
And,
Lucky 7?
Yeah, about somewhere in there. And what I really find is that there's so many people who get this idea in their head that they want to, make a film or they want to do a radio show or whatever it is, and that they just get the equipment and they're just going to do it. And truthfully, it's only been, in the past year for myself that I've really been able to build what I would say is a decent reputation for myself and put out work that I'm proud of and this type of thing. So you have to be patient. You have to be willing to do it for the long haul. And I think also you would probably agree that you can't do it just for the notoriety or the monetary gain, because if you're in it for that, it's a rude awakening. You have to be in it because you love it. And so you're saying that this film now, Hostage to the Devil, is your first feature full-length film that you're going to be putting out. And how did this come into your hands? How, specifically, how did this topic come to you and inspire you to turn it into a full-length documentary?
So I was actually writing a script. It was only a short film about dark and light and making choices, and it was actually based on some experiences my father had with. He used to have a cold caller at the door. He would beg for. He was homeless, and he would come to the door and he would beg for food, etc. And he was a cold caller, but it was, in a nutshell, I was starting to write a script about that, and how my father always said that he had a very dark eyes, and he just something about him just sort of, made him uneasy and stuff. So, and my father was he was the Church of England minister. So this is, I mean, I should have mentioned that first. He had a lot of visitors at the door, as you can imagine, in the vicarage. Sure. And so I was actually writing a script about my father's experiences with the people that he had met in his parish, and I got a phone call from Causeway Pictures, who are based in Ireland, Northern Ireland, and New York. And yeah, off the phone, they said, we've got the project for you. We like your work, and we like you. Well, that's what they said on the phone. And they said, can you come into the office and see what you think? So, like I said before, at the beginning of the interview, I came into the office and they told me about the guy, and I was just like, wow, how come nobody has done this or done anything about this man before, etc., etc. So I said yes, and they handed me the 2 truckloads of paperwork on the man, on the research, because they'd spent about 2 years previously doing the research on the man, doing their best to find, get to the truth. Sometimes it's not always best to get, to spend too much time, particularly when the Vatican's involved, which we'll talk about later. Yeah. So, yeah, that's it was quite strange. Yeah, it was quite a strange coincidence. A lot of Malachi's friends who've told me recently that it's all happened for a reason. So, without getting to going down that road, I mean, it's been I've been blessed with the subject matter and the man himself. So, it's been a great journey so far. It's been it's been a slow journey, but slow for a reason. It's like I said before, I need to do this story justice. So we've taken our time. So that's where we are now. So it's a lot of coincidence involved, or as I said before, Malachi's friends, not a lot of coincidence. So. Sure.
Well, the interesting thing that I have been listening to and learning about Malachi Martin since for many years, actually. The first time that I ever heard him speak was on Coast to Coast AM with Art Bell.
Oh, yes.
And his famous interview that I think today still I see people sharing it via Facebook as though it's brand new. It's just a timeless interview. And so that was really my first exposure to the man. And I started picking up different things that he had written. He obviously wrote books about a wide variety of topics, whether it was shenanigans going on in the Vatican or his own personal experiences, of course, in his book Hostage to the Devil, which is obviously where the title of this film comes from. Tell us a little bit, but at the same time, we kind of are in a different generation now. There, as you say, there hasn't really been a exhaustive work on the man, and it would be impossible to do so because, as you said, there is so many different directions you could go. But for this generation that maybe isn't familiar with him, tell us a little bit more about who Father Malachi Martin was. And, one of the most fascinating things about this man is that he seemed to appeal to people across a variety of lines, whether it was your across denominational lines, across even worldview lines. Tell us a little bit about what you've learned about him and really who he was.
So earlier on the project, I thought that I could remain neutral about the man, and that sounds quite controversial, but there's a lot of things that I couldn't prove, a lot of things that I could prove, a lot of things that other people could prove, a lot of things that people could argue against. So it was initially I believed that I could, in my head, let's this is in year one of the project. Let's remain neutral here, and then a very, very important guy in the film, which I won't spoil it, who is probably the ultimate nemesis of Father Martin, told me over the phone 2.5, 3 years ago that you cannot remain, neutral about the man. you're a filmmaker. It's the same as storytelling. You've got, you have to sit on one side of the fence. So that was a great bit of advice, because originally I was thought, no, let's try and remain neutral about the man. A lot of, as I'm sure you found with your own sort of research, a lot of conspiracy theories surrounding the man. Incredible conspiracy theories, and that's why I said before about staying away from the internet forums, and it's a very harmful place, and everybody's posting all sorts of things. So for me, it was a journey, a personal journey for me as well. And like you, I would listen to the Coast to Coast tapes. I would listen to his Bernard Jansen tapes, Kingdom of Darkness, for example, to be specific. And I would go out for a jog, for example, with my headphones on. And yeah, it was. He was, to strip him down to his character, he was a people's person, and he got on with everybody, and he made people feel special. He was controversial with some of his, he was an Irishman. He would tell jokes. Sometimes people would feel like, why is he telling me this joke? That a priest shouldn't be telling me this joke. But that's the way he was. He was an Irishman. He was a maverick. He was, he roared against the evil spirits on TV, on the radio. And he was ridiculed for it, but also the complete opposite. So for me, I don't want to go too much into this because it'll spoil the film. But to be fair, I'll be honest with you, that one of the biggest questions in the film that I raise through the 90 minutes is, was he God's warrior or was he a mythomaniac? And it's a very controversial question, but I had to go controversial with the man because he's just an incredible human being. And throughout the film, we do question a few areas of his life, but that makes him fascinating, and that makes him extremely special and captivating throughout the film. I'm so lucky to have such a main character stroke protagonist in the film as Father Martin, because his life is incredible. And sort of flashback to year 2 in the project, I was getting really frustrated because I was in 100% journalist mode. I wanted to find out every fact. I wanted to prove every single fact about the man. And I wasn't getting anywhere. I mean, the Vatican is just as locked down as the CIA. The CIA is actually more open than the Vatican, to be honest. It's incredible. It's absolutely incredible. They will not give us anything about the man, etc. So I was starting to sort of tear my hair out, and it was sort of like a eureka moment the next morning. I sort of woke up and I thought, you know what? I know this is a feature documentary, and it's going to feel like a feature film stroke, documentary. It's going to be cinematic and it's going to be powerful. And I thought, you know what? Let's just separate myself from journalist mode and actually go back into my passion of filmmaking mode and tell a story based on as much fact as you can gather. That's what I did. As soon as I broke away from this hardcore, I want to find every single fact about the man and prove every single fact, I sort of broke away from that, and it's more of a sense of, in the film now, it's more of a sense of, you know what, make your own mind up about the man. I'm not going to tell you, I've got my feelings towards the man, and that will be reflected in the film, but by all means, decide upon yourselves, about the man. Who am I to say this is what I think about the man? So at the end of the film, we're also going to explore the existence of the devil, etc., and demonic possession, for example. But who am I to say this is what the man was? So you as an audience will decide upon yourselves, and that's the only way I could approach the actual story in the film itself. So, and wow, it's been an incredible journey, and I just can't wait for people to see it.
I'm so eager to see it. And it's interesting because I was looking at your Twitter,
yes,
whether it was yesterday or today, I can't remember, but I was looking at it, and it occurred to me that as much as one tries to, I imagine, stay a little bit objective about many of these things, especially when you're considering the very question of the supernatural and the existence thereof. But at the same time, I saw a very interesting tweet from you that said something, I'll paraphrase, but it was something along the lines of, given the subject matter that I've been studying for the past however much time, I will say, do not mess with this Charlie challenge. And I thought that was so interesting because, I've had a similar feeling about, so many people say it was just a game, it's just silliness, whatever, but obviously if you have any understanding of a supernatural worldview, the default feeling would be, this is not something to mess with. And it got me thinking about, if you're immersing yourself in this type of research for that amount of time, I don't think you could walk away from it unaffected. Is that pretty fair to say?
Yeah, I mean, I've got about 50 plus hours of real recorded exorcism footage from the 90s, particularly the late 90s, around Father Martin's sort of reign, etc. And, and you speak, the main contributors in the film, which we'll go into soon, one of them was a psychotherapist who was probably one of the trailblazers in America, connected to Lorraine Warren and Ed Warren, one of the first sort of science-based practitioners on the teams, for example, when he first started in the late 90s. And she was sat there in a lovely room and living room in Connecticut, and it was just the way she was talking about it. She wasn't being sensational. She wasn't saying, oh yeah, the head was spinning and she was vomiting nails, and it was just the opposite. But it was the way she was explaining the state of the room. People knew there was something evil. There was a lot of hate in the room. Little basic things which, for me, really hammered it home because it wasn't sensational. This is real people who had their own experiences, and one of the big quotes in the film is Lorraine, who's the psychotherapist, talks about experiences teachers. You can't sort of point to the corner of the room and say the devil's over there or the demon's over there. Experience teachers, and it's your own unique experiences to what you see in that room or what you hear or what you smell, whatever it is. And these are real people who weren't on camera to sell a book or to promote the TV series or whatever it was. These are just normal people who are now retired from the service, the exorcism ministry, for example, who were just telling me their experiences. And for me, it was just incredible. It was, I'm trying to remain as skeptical as I can, and you meet the likes of Rob Sarchi and John Zaffis, and these guys have just got some incredible stories as well, and who also had Father Martin had a big impact in their lives as well, and it was just this, Hollywood. It's Hollywood versus realism, and that's what I'm trying to get across in the film. Is Marty's making a film about exorcism. First thing they're going to start believing is he's going to go really sensational with it all, and with the reconstructions, he's going to start going really, flamboyant and sensational and dramatic. But when you watch the film, it's not. It's stripped down to its core. It's stripped down to the VHS tape that it was recorded on. It's raw and it's real, and you're hearing real stuff, and and again, like Father Martin as a character, by the end of the film, you'll make your own decisions about what you're hearing and what you're seeing on the film. And who am I to say, believe in the devil, you need to believe in demons? Who am I to say that? I've got my own beliefs, But at the end of the day, at the end of the film, when the credits roll, go with friends to, go and, have a drink, go and eat a cake, or go for a meal and talk about the film. That's what I wanted to spark discussion. Is important for me. So I'm not gonna, by all means, I'm not gonna go crazy with the reconstructions and the dramatic sequences. It's raw, and these are people who it's affected them, and it still affects them to this day, even though they're retired from the service. But it's. I mean, I mentioned the word service because it is. It's you devote a lot of your own spare time to this, And after speaking to Ralph as well, it gets quite demanding, and it's it's. I just felt like. And Father Martin would always. I always slip into Malachi, by the way. Malachi Martin. I'm sure it's no sort of disrespect to Father Martin, but I always know him as Malachi Martin. So, he would always say, the stuff he sees on TV, particularly the Exorcist film, and when the book was released, it was this Frankenstein and Dracula sort of style kind of approach to the subject matter, and that's a quite an interesting aspect of the film as well. We actually talk about. Without being too controversial, we actually talk about Peter Blatty, who, you can imagine when, the Exorcist, he wrote The Exorcist, and then 3 years later, Malachi wrote Hush to the Devil, and from Peter Blatty's point of view, he was the only guy in America who should only write about the subject matter, and when Malachi Martin's book got released, and I know this because we actually interviewed Father Martin's literary agent, Lila Carve, so she tells us everything, all warts and all accounts of the book release, and it's a fascinating sort of take on a lot of particularly when you watch the film, you have no idea what goes on behind the scenes with regards to book sales and movie releases and stuff like that. So it's an interesting chapter of the film. Actually, Peter Blatty basically threw his toys out the pram in a nutshell. So.
That's really interesting.
I'm sorry to waffle on there, but by all means, tell me to slow down a bit because it's an extremely important, obviously, film for me, and I'm about 3+ years into the project, and it's sort of it's become my life in a sense. So.
Well, I think it's fantastic because I imagine that there is just this overwhelming amount of information that comes at you, and each bit of it sort of informs the overall, what will ultimately become the big picture. It's a really interesting story about the Blatty because, when obviously the book The Exorcist came out and ultimately the film, I don't know how much prior to that people were really thinking about demonic possession and that type of thing, but once all of that came out, people had this extreme view of it, this terrifying, pea soup spitting, head spinning idea, and it terrified people. But one thing that was interesting in our mutual friend Ralph Sarchi, when I spoke to him last summer about his experiences, is that while he will admit that some pretty fantastically supernatural things do occur, it's, as you said, that's not the type of thing you're actually looking for. It tends to be a bit more subtle. It tends to be a bit more raw. Sometimes it's something as simple as a heaviness in the air that people pick up on, and that there's this change. And what was it like sitting down and talking with Ralph? He is quite a character, isn't he?
I was a little bit worried. Hope Ralph doesn't hear this podcast or radio interview, by the way. So, I'm actually going to see him in 2 weeks' time. So I was a little bit worried because I'd watched his Sarchi documentary, which was released before his Deliver Us from Evil feature got released, and as a filmmaker stroke film director, I was sat there watching it, and I was like, wow, when this guy speaks on camera, I want to listen to every single thing he wants to say. But in the back of my mind, I was a little bit concerned because he's so passionate, it sometimes doesn't communicate to an audience, if you know what I mean. So my concern was a little bit, let's try and humanize him a little bit more in the film. And I was a little bit nervous, and he rocked up we actually interviewed him in a cafe in just outside Brooklyn, and absolute gentleman, intense. And then as soon as we started talking about Father Martin, it was incredible because you really started to, I wouldn't say vulnerable moments in the interview, but he was smiling and he was laughing, and for me, that's from an empathy point of view. From a, you know, at the end of the day, Ralph's one of the main characters in the documentary, so that's important. You know, he can't be fierce all the time because it gets a little bit too much for an audience.
Yeah.
Particularly a non-religious audience as well. You know, this is what we're up against. You know, there are non-believers out there, and I'm not trying to make people believe, but he gave me little vulnerable moments, and I was just like, wow, yes. It just humanizes him, and I know he's got a message to say on camera, but it just, as soon as we started to talk about Father Martin, you just knew how much the man had an impact on his own life as a mentor and a guide in the area of demonology, and it was just fascinating to watch this really, you know, end of the day, you know, without being too cliche, tough guy who's passionate about what he does and spends a lot of times on the streets, you know, trying to clean up the streets, and then seeing him in this cafe on the table just smiling and telling me great stories about the man, and it was just little powerful moments. It was just, I just can't wait for people to see that other side to Ralph, in a sense, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, absolutely. And for those in the audience who are not familiar with Ralph Sarchie is the subject of the film that came out last summer, Deliver Us from Evil, and he was this former NYPD sergeant who worked in the toughest neighborhood in New York, and he ended up, through a series of circumstances, becoming also a demonologist and working with exorcists and exposing a lot of that to the world, and ultimately wrote a book, and now he kind of is a little higher profile than maybe he was prior to the film. But I had a very similar experience when talking to him, because he's very that, you know, on the surface he's very that sort of cliche, tough as nails, former cop, you know, he doesn't suffer fools gladly, you know. He's a very, very intense figure, but when we had a similar experience when I was interviewing him and the subject of Malachi Martin came up, he just, there was a definite change, and he softened, and he was very nostalgic and very sincere, and I can only imagine what it would have been like to be sitting across from him, hearing him share some of these stories. Yeah.
Also with Ralph, it's and the likes of John Zaffis, which we'll talk about later, it's these guys, it's about trust. It's about he has a good BS radar, as I do myself. You know, they spend a lot of their times dealing with people, and sometimes people can let them down, etc. So it took a while to really gain the trust of Ralph, and he, at the end of it, he ended up giving me 2 hours of, no one's ever seen this before, but Father Martin used to do workshops, sometimes with Lorraine and Ed Warren, and Ralph used to organise privately, but he used to do workshops, and no one's ever seen this footage, and Ralph gave me 2 hours, which he had, of Father Martin in his workshops, and I was like, this is just gold. No one's ever seen this, and Ralph was like, I just didn't know what to do with this footage that I had, and when you called, it was like I have to do this film with Marty, kind of thing. And it was this sort of, at first he was very cold and very dismissive and locked down, and I was like, wow, I'm pretty good. I would love to get Ralph on camera just to talk. And then the next morning, it was literally, Ralph told me, he just had a little bit of a moment, and it was like, right, I need to do this film with Marty, and it was incredible because he phoned me back and he was like, right, I'll do the interview, and I've got some footage here that no one's seen before of Father Martin doing his workshops, and I was just like, oh, absolutely incredible. So it's about trust, and particularly in the area that Ralph Sarchie works in. It's important to have trust, and because people will shoot you down, and people will, they'll backstab you, etc. And that happens in a lot of areas of work. But once I had that trust with Ralph, it was he's just, and it's great to see, like, one of the funder of the film, the Irish Film Board over here in Dublin, and they're just mesmerised by the man. They're like, Ralph, they're mesmerised by him, and the way the interview has happened, and the way he's been human on camera, and he's just coming across so well, and I just can't wait for you to see the Ralph sections of the film, because it's very, very powerful. And he although he will deny this, and he'll probably tell me off for saying this on the radio, but he does get emotionally attached to the cases. He does, like every single person probably does, because these people who he's dealing with, whether it is psychological or whether it is something of, not of this world, these people are suffering from something. Mm-hmm. And Ralph, if you look at his previous career in the NYPD, he helps people, and he's doing exactly the same thing, but in the world of demonology. And it's been a natural. I'm sure it's been a natural sort of a transition for him as well. So
yeah,
he's an incredible guy, and I can't thank him enough to what he's done to the project and for what he's offered to the project. So. Just to go back on the point that you made when you speaking to Ralph about these exorcisms that he's experienced and what he's seen, and it's not about it's not about the spinning heads, etc. I actually was invited to go to Rome in 2014, which is great. Mm-hmm. I was actually invited to the Exorcist College in Rome. Oh. So there's a section, but I'm sure the producers will start phoning me now saying, "Don't give them too much about the film." But it's literally, I found out about this course. That's hosted by the university in the Vatican, and it's the Exorcist College, and it sounds really like Hollywood, but all these exorcists go into college and being taught how to do exorcisms, but it literally is that. It's a course in Rome, which I'm sure your listeners can Google this right now, but it's actually a devoted course to exorcism, and not only do they invite hand-selected priests to attend, but they invite science-based practitioners as well to the course. Mm-hmm. And I found this fascinating. So I was invited to the university, and I got to interview an exorcist in Rome who had assisted Gabriel Amorth in Rome. I'm not sure if you know who that is. He's the top dog in Rome. He's the Vatican exorcist in Rome. And I was speaking to Father Truckery. And I asked him the question about this Hollywood thing, about is it like what you see in the movies? Expecting him to say, "Oh no, it's all gobbledygook. It's all it's all fake. It's all." And he was talking about, he would see one. I mean, he said he knew of one exorcist who had seen one manifestation in 20 years of being an exorcist. Mm. So he said he'd see. His friend had seen a girl crawling around she was crawling around and levitating around the room like a spider, like a creature, like a spider-stroke creature along the floor. But that was one manifestation he saw in 20 years of being an exorcist. Mm. So he looked at me and he said, "Marty, what the films do is they just condense a lot of the reported manifestations recorded into one film, because at the end of the day, they're selling a product, they're selling a film. Right. They want bums on seats in the cinema." So I was expecting to sort of dismiss all this sort of Hollywood sensational, response to the subject matter, but he was saying that it doesn't happen all the time, but it does very, 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 very rarely. Right. And also, as well, he would say that it was fascinating. He was sat there, and he's again in the film. These are just normal people. These are well-rounded people. They're not sensational. They're just normal people who are just doing this day in, day out. This is their job. And the father turned to me and he said, 90% of the people that come to him as an exorcist, it's nothing demonic. It's nothing out of this world.
Right.
It can be cured by science. It can be helped. It can be assisted with science-based sort of procedures, for example. And it was incredible, because he was like, I'm skeptical as well. I'm skeptical as well. And it's a bit like a person running into a GP's office and saying, Doctor, I've got cancer. Mm-hmm. The doctor's going to go, "Yes, you're right. You've got cancer. Come with me into the back room. We'll do an exorcism." For example, it's very much, okay, stop. Let's start let's start to sort of slow this down a bit. And so that he would say 90%. I was totally wow, 90% of the people that come to him, it's not out of this world.
Yeah.
And then he would talk about the rare cases, and he would talk about the signs of possession. Father Trucker was saying he wouldn't initially turn around and say, yes, you are demonically possessed. Let's go straight into a rite of exorcism. It was no. Let's slow down. Let's bring in investigation. Let's bring in some questioning. Let's do a thorough investigation first. And he like I said before, he turned around to me and said 90% of the people that came through his door, it wasn't it wasn't demonic. And I found that fascinating. But obviously, there's that 10% there. It's very in extremely rare cases.
Right.
He would have to. He would. It's this. I found this fascinating. It's this proof.
Yep.
They have to find proof. So when they go to it's a chain of command. So they have to show proof or show evidence of proof. And he talked to me about the signs of demonic possession. I found that fascinating as well, which we explore in the film. It's a difference. And I know your next question is going to be, tell me about these signs of possession. I'm not going to, because that's going to totally spoil the film. But I found it fascinating. It's like a checklist. It's they're looking for these little signs of possession. And he actually told me about. He discussed 4 signs of possession, to be specific. And again, like I said before, I'm not going to go into too much detail because it's going to spoil the film. And he turned around to me and he said, 3 of those 4 can be easily faked. And I was like, I'm glad you've said that, because that was my next question.
Right.
And he said, but there's one that you cannot fake, and nobody to this day can explain it. And it's very, very common in the real cases of demonic possession. And I don't want to. I mean, I don't want to spoil it for the audience, but I don't want to. At the end of the day, I'm making a film, and I want you to go and watch it. I don't want to tell you the whole film on the radio. But I just found it fascinating. I found it fascinating how these guys were so rounded, and so normal, and this was normal, and this is what they were dealing with every single day of their lives, and it wasn't sensational. It was normal. These people are suffering. Mm-hmm. But I also, and also in the film, it's the question about, does the devil exist is quite a general question to ask, but is this person you're seeing on the camera now, is he or she suffering from something which is not of this world, or is this something that can be, explained through science? And it's fascinating. It's a very delicate area to discuss in a film, and great. I've got so many hours and hours of real record exorcisms, and also it's the power of suggestion as well. It's, if I was, for example, if you came into the studio and I showed you 15 minutes of a clip, and before you came in I said, right, I gave you the backstory, and this girl is so, and she's possessed by a demon, for example, then it's the power of suggestion in a sense. I'm already putting ideas in your mind, and you're already seeing things. You're already interpreting things that you should differently, in a sense, rather than just sort of bring you into the studio, sit you down, or even into a cinema screening, sit you into the chair and play the film. And I again, with the film, you've just got to watch it and just sort it out yourselves, and answer it yourselves. I can't answer it for you. I can't answer the thoughts you have about Malachi. I can't answer the questions you have about the devil. I can't. All I've got to do is produce something and put something on screen, and to show you what I've found in my 3+ years of research and investigation and journey. And it's just, who am I to, like I said before, who am I to say this exists or this is what he was like in real life? It's not at all. And so, Yeah, I mean, it's all when you're in that dark cinema with the 5.1 surround sound. It's you make up your own mind, and you make up very quickly. So,
you know what it brings to my mind is just to go on a little tangent here is. Previous to his film Deliver Us from Evil, director Scott Derrickson did the film The Exorcism of Emily Rose. Yeah. And I tend to think that was a very skillfully presented film because it takes the true story of Annalise Michel and this exorcism, relatively high profile, and it presents it through a series of court cases and this type of thing, and it really does present the two extremes. Was this woman a victim of demonic possession, or was she, an epileptic who was being deprived of medical treatment? And really, as scary as that movie is, at the end of the film, it still kind of leaves it in the hands of the audience to determine, was this really happening? Was it a case of, overzealous religious people? Very, very interesting. And I think it points to why those who involve themselves in an exorcism ministry or a deliverance ministry outside of Catholicism, whatever the case is, one of the most important things it would be, as you say, to keep that sober mind about yourself. But those 10% of cases that do present with what would be considered, evidence to the mind of the person carrying out the investigation, I would imagine that those 10% of cases are enough to convince anyone present that something is going on that's maybe beyond the realm of our everyday understanding.
Yeah, it's the curious mind of the human being. So I speak to a lot of non-believers. I speak to a lot of people who are on the fence, who aren't sure of what to believe, and it's just the curiosity which, for me as a filmmaker, will hook the audience into watching this. And who, like I said before, who am I to, tell you this is real?
Sure.
Interpret for yourself. All I'm doing is bringing real people on camera. I'm not being sensational about the subject matter at all. I'm just bringing in real people who have experienced this in their lives.
Sure.
Who've met Father Martin as well, but also when we're specifically talking about the existence of the demonic and the devil, it's, as Lorene points out, the psychotherapist, the experience teaches all. It's about unique experiences, and I also, in the back of my mind, it's difficult because I'm not selling the film. I'm making a film.
Yeah.
The selling part comes down to the producers, and that's at the end of the day, they're the workhorse of the whole film industry, and which they do sometimes get neglected for the right reasons. But they're selling a film, they're selling entertainment. But with the joy of this is a documentary. I can't go sensational. I can't go outside the realms of fiction with it, because it's a documentary. So all I'm doing is showcasing you what I've been told on camera, what I've been given with footage, what I've been told on the telephone. It's just, in a sense, it's my journey as well as a filmmaker.
Sure.
And I'm sure people will find it interesting, believers and unbelievers. It's like I said before, it's once the credits roll, go out, have a drink, just talk about what you've seen over the 90 minutes and ask a few questions yourself. I mean, I'm not going to start, getting more people into church the next day, but it just sparks discussion. The human mind is curious, the human beings are curious, and they want to, it's the what if kind of question. So it's I'm just excited to get this film finished and get out there. So.
Yeah, and speaking of different people that you had a chance to get to know and talk to and get that human experience, one of the other people that I know that you had a conversation with for this film was John Zaffis, who obviously is a very interesting man, has been involved in some very high profile cases. What was it like getting to know John Zaffis?
Similar to Ralph, it was very much trust. And who is this guy contacting me on the telephone or via Facebook or wherever the means that I chose to contact them initially? I'm sure Ralph and John get swamped with Facebook social media messages and telephone, messages. And it was with John, it took a while, and I would say if it wasn't for Ralph, I wouldn't have got John. Ralph, literally, this was. I'm not sure whether I should say this or not, but I will anyway. Straight after Ralph's first interview with me in Brooklyn, he asked me, "How are you getting on with John? Is he going to come and talk about Father Martin?" And I was like, "I'm not sure. I think he's a little bit unsure about me, and he doesn't know. I'm not sure."
Yeah.
And he went, "Leave it." He said to me, "Marty, leave it with me." And literally, by the time Ralph got back to his car, John Zaffis had sent me a message on Facebook saying, "Ring me. Let's do this." Were his words. So it was the power of Ralph Sarchi again, really, that got John Zaffis in the equation. But I mean, like just to talk about it before about the John Zaffis and Ralph Sarchi are very careful of who they surround themselves with, because I mentioned before about backstabbing, and it's a crazy world, particularly when you start getting into the TV world as well. So I don't blame John for being nervous about speaking to me about the subject matter. But again, it was So we the very, very small crew and I just rocked up at John Zaffis' place, and Ralph had met us there. He met us there, and we went in, and I'm sure you guys knew who John Zaffis was when I'm sure your listeners do as well, but for me, not really. I mean, I'm not really, to be honest. Yeah, that's no disrespect for what John does within the area of what he does, but I rocked up to John Zaffis' house, and obviously I'd seen The Conjuring, and I was aware of obviously Ed and Lorraine Warren, etc., and about their museum that they had in the house, and they got all these artifacts and all from previous cases, etc., and it was all spiritually protected, etc. So it was mentioned to me that John has a museum below his location as well, and I was like, interesting, okay. So we conducted the interview, and John was great. And again, it was just when you start asking him questions about Father Martin, you just see his eyes light up, and you just see how much Father Martin meant to John as well. And John was extremely defensive of Father Martin in the sense of he was one of the first that came forward using media as a way of communicating the existence of the devil, in a sense, and he was ridiculed for it, and he also was praised for it. And John was very much a supporter and a defender of Father Martin in that sense, and I'm sure that John's doing exactly what Father Martin was doing now. He's got a heavy TV presence at the moment, and it was the question, to John was after the interview was great, and I said, any chance of doing a bit of filming in the museum? And he was like, I just asked him, was expecting to say no, it's too, it'll be too dangerous, etc. And he was like, yeah, come on. I was like, oh, okay. I wasn't expecting that answer, so it was a little bit of a okay. And I know, obviously, if you follow John's social media presence, he's looking somewhere to rehouse this museum of his. But I found it fascinating because there were all these artifacts in there, and it was crazy because Ralph was getting quite, protective, and he was like, right, you need to hide, keep the rosary on us, and put the medallion in your pocket, and never don't all these procedures, which is great. And it was great because before we went into the museum, I turned to my producer Chris, who was stood there, and he looked quite white, like he was white looking, and he's Irish, so he's white anyway. But I mean, I'm talking, he was grey. I'd say he was grey. And I was like, Chris, are you okay? And I could see the beads of sweat dripping down, and he was like, Marty, come over here. And I was like, okay. I went, you okay? And he was like, feel my pocket. And so basically, the pocket that he put the medallion in, before he went into the museum, I touched it, and it was red hot. It was burning the pocket off him. Basically, it was pretty crazy. And we, typical Irish crew, we were just laughing it off, and everyone, like, that nervous laugh you have when you're like, no idea if this is real or not. And we had this nervous laugh, and then John was like, "Come on, let's go into the museum." And it was just the atmosphere in there. It was just, and this is what I'm saying in the film. It's not about what you see on screen. It's about what you feel in person, and it's about experience. And that's the whole thing. It's about unique experiences. To be fair, it's only until you have that unique experiences when you start to really give the subject matter a little bit more attention. And it was just it was cold, and it was creepy, and you'll see a little bit in the film as well, which is great. I haven't actually told John this yet, but but it's going back to experiences rather than what you see on TV, and it's about what you experience. And I can't, unfortunately, I can't prove the existence of demons and the existence of the devil on a TV screen or a cinema screen. You've got to do that for yourselves. You've got to, sometimes people never have that experience, which is unfortunate. But so the John Zaffis experience was incredible, and I think John liked it because I didn't know his background that much, and I didn't really know how big he was, and we got a photograph taken on his porch, on his decking at the back, and it was a great photograph because it was like this. We've all come together on this day to talk about Father Martin, and it was a very powerful moment. And it's actually a photograph which is on the film's Facebook page, Hostage the Devil Facebook page, and it's a great shot of all of us on the decking, sort of come together to talk about Father Martin, but also talk about the subject matter as well, about demonic possession. So. But it was quite nice to see John defending Father Martin, and in a sense, he's sort of carrying on his work in the media and in the public domain as well. So it was fascinating chapter of the film.
I'm enjoying so much hearing about the sort of trust that you have to gain with people who work in these realms, because, as I said, I experienced the same thing with Ralph, a little bit. I don't know, maybe a little bit cold at first, and you can tell he's feeling you out and trying to determine.
Can I tell you a great story about Ralph?
Yeah.
So, I rang Ralph. The first time I ever spoke to him on the phone, Ralph Sarchi, it was incredible because he said this is, by the way, this is before the word hello on the telephone. He said, "Marty, I believe you're making a film about Father Martin." Yes. Well, if you badmouth him or turn him out to be what he wasn't, then you've made an enemy for life.
Wow.
And this was before hello on the telephone conversation. And I was like, stood to attention. I was like, "Yes, sir. Yes, Ralph. Yes, yes, Mr. Sarchi." And he was like, "Don't call me Mr. Sarchi." And I did the same thing with John Zaffis as well. I was like, "Mr. Zaffis." He's like, "Don't call me Mr. Zaffis." It's fascinating to see Ralph and John in the same room because they're very much alike. They're very down to earth. They're very rough around the edges, and it's like it's fascinating to watch these two sort of sparring off with one another and winding each other up. It's incredible. And John was the same on the telephone. He's like, "Don't call me Mr. Zaffis. I'm called John." I was like, "Oh, sorry. I'm just trying to be nice. I've never spoke to you before, and I'm trying to invade your home and talk to you about somebody who's special in your life." So. Again, it's about the trust, and it wasn't a threat. At first, I was like, "Wow, this guy's intense," but he's not being aggressive. He's just Ralph, for example, and he doesn't care about critics. Now, he doesn't care about the non-believers. It's just what he believes, and he's forceful, and he's not going to force it down your neck. It's what he believes, and it's his temperament, and his personality, and it's his character. You know, he's not going to change the way he is. But sometimes, you know, like I said before, it's important for me to humanize him now. I mean, sometimes that doesn't communicate very well after a while. So I need to humanize him and show the audience these little vulnerable moments and stuff like that. So it's been So Ralph and John are considerable characters. The guy, hope they're around for a long, long time because they're doing it. They're doing the sort of area justice and the great guys.
I can just tell from the tone of your voice that you've had a similar experience as myself with them because, well, I haven't spoken to John Zaffis at any great length, but as far as Ralph, you know, he is very guarded. But one remarkable thing, and as I said, I can just tell from your tone, is that once he has determined that you're legitimate and that you are not going to, you know, mess with him or you know what I mean? You're not going to try to pull any foolishness. He becomes the most warm and, you know, you are now in his circle. And he said as much to me when I first finally got a chance to speak to him one-on-one. Off the record, he said to me, you know, I trust you. You're now in my inner circle. I'm going to pray for you every single day. And
it's quite warm. It's quite warm, but from a TV stroke storytelling point of view, you have to humanize the characters in the film, not just Ralph, but the other characters in the film, and yeah, I mean, there's not just Ralph in the film. There's other incredible characters in the film as well, and it's interesting. It's an interesting journey.
Is there? I knew for a fact that you were having Ralph and John in the show, but is there anyone else that you want to talk about as far as not giving too much away about the direction of the film, but anyone else who highlights fairly prominently in this story?
Yeah, so again, it was, I think his closest friends found us first. So once the power of social media and the power of the internet, I think they found out. Well, not me, but they found out that Causeway Pictures were making a film about Malachi, so they made the initial contact first, because obviously, you know, they want to protect their best friends and their best friend, Father Martin. But so there's a character in the film called Robert, and I don't want to reveal his background now because it's going to be a big sort of twist in the film. I want bums on seats, not, you know, I don't want to give away the plot over a radio interview. So Robert has been incredible. Robert's similar to Ralph in the sense of, Ralph would always see Father Martin as his mentor, in the area of demonology and the Catholic faith, the Roman Catholic faith. But Robert, it was a little bit more. They were best buddies. They were best friends. So we actually. In the film, the main event of the film, for example, in Hush of the Devil, is we actually go back to the last exorcism that Father Martin conducted a few days before he died. And it's in Connecticut. And it was a 4-year-old girl in the home of a very prominent psychologist, which I won't reveal on here, but you'll see it in the film. And he's a very close friend of Father Martin's as well. And they used to sort of buddy up with each other. You had the signs and faith in the same room, and they trusted each other's judgments. So basically this psychiatrist had asked Father Martin to come to his home to consult and to evaluate this 4-year-old girl. And Robert was Malachi's best friend, but also was his driver. He had a good working Jeep. He would always say to Father Martin, he would always say to Malachi, his friend, he would always say, if you need to go anywhere, make sure my number's the first on the list, because I will take you wherever you need to go. So Robert, over the years, used to take Father Martin to his exorcisms, to and from his exorcisms, but also his other priestly duties as well. He used to visit hospitals and other things as well. So he wasn't just his driver to exorcisms, but Robert would also drive him to his other duties as well. So we actually brought Robert back, and he hasn't been back since. And it's quite a powerful moment in the film. It's the main event of the film. It's extremely interesting because we bring this Robert back to the actual house of Father Martin's last reported exorcism / consultation of this 4-year-old girl. And yeah, it's, without spoiling it, it's quite an emotional / powerful moment in the film. And then we talk about, a few days later, we talk about Father Martin's death. And I actually am going to reveal this now on the interview. Father Martin believed that what he encountered in that room came back to his apartment and finished him off.
Wow.
Yeah, so we actually explore that and investigate that claim as well. And so so Robert's been a fascinating character. He, without revealing his own backstory, he's been such a help from day one, and we actually made him exec producer on the film as well, because he put so much work in behind the scenes over the last 3.5 years, helping us make this film true as we can make it. And yeah, it's quite a powerful. It's quite emotional / powerful stroke.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's, when you watch it, you're not so much expecting it, but it's raising this question again about the film was he God's warrior? Was Father Martin God's warrior? Was he a mythomaniac? And again, at the end of the film, you make your own decision. Sure. I know what I believe as a filmmaker, but I'm not going to force that down your neck as an audience member. So yeah. It's so the Robert sequences are he's the main contributor in the film, but it's a fascinating journey. We bring him back, and yeah, it's very, very interesting what he comes out with, what he experiences, and what he actually what he feels on the day, etc. So it's great without being sensational. I'm not. I don't want the audience to be scared in the sense that they're going to watch something boring. It's not going to be boring. It's going to be a film about humans. It's about human response to what they're seeing and what they're witnessing themselves. So it's not Hollywood. I don't want the audience to be thinking, it's going to be it's normal. It's human, and it's raw. Basically, that's all I can say.
Yeah, it sounds very, very fascinating. And, you've mentioned a couple of times, as far as just on a personal level, the work that you've put into it and the types of people and information that you've been absorbing through the years. It's interesting because you and I were talking a little bit off recording about how... and this is something that actually you hear about periodically when people are taking on subject matter of the supernatural or what have you, that they personally experience things that, you have to ask yourself, is it the power of suggestion? Is something real manifesting? And I shared with you how it seems as if every time I interview somebody or take on a subject matter that deals with this evil with supernatural, I almost always have some kind of technical difficulty. It happens almost without fail, and it has happened. My incredible skill as an editor, the audience will be none the wiser. But you and I have experienced a little bit of technical difficulty in this very episode. So I was just curious. You mentioned the story about the medallion in John Zaffis's museum. Anything else that happened that gave you pause?
Not myself. I think something major happened after I actually interviewed Robert in 2013 in New York in his office. working, and this was just the interview took about an hour. It was only me. It was only Robert and I in the room, and we did the interview, and it was more for research basically. And I was getting the flight home to Ireland that evening actually, and I packed all the kit away, and I got the taxi back to the airport, and I'd heard from Robert for about a week or 2 weeks, and it was quite unheard of because Robert was quite he's in touch quite a lot on email or Skype or whatever, and he told me that about an hour or two after the interview, he was driving home and he was in a major car accident.
Wow.
And yeah, he was the old sort of, the paramedics was like, "You're lucky to be alive," etc., etc.
Mm-hmm.
And he saw that as a warning. And I thought nothing of it, and I thought, oh, he's just being used. He's just been a little bit, But it was when I spoke to him again on Skype, he sounded, really, really spooked. He wasn't the confident Robert that I had spoken to previously, and he was extremely spooked and also frail as well, medically as well. He was in a bad way medically, and it's all this sort of you can't read into it too much. But he got himself back together, and he found the strength to carry on with the project and help us out and stuff. And he was in a second accident as well.
Oh my goodness!
This year. So after this year's interview as well, he straight after the interview again, he was in another car accident as well. And then by the way, the worst thing you can do with a TV or film crew is to start to spread these stories, because they, everything that happens on a film set now is all it's all cause of the devil, and
sure.
it spreads like wildfire, this paranoia. And a few things are happening to me. I don't want to creep the audience out here, but I saw a vision of a woman hanging from my landing in my home about a year ago. So all I can say is I started to see stuff when I was getting more intense with the project. 'Cause obviously, I wasn't intensely involved with this project for like 3+ years solid. This wasn't like full time for me. I would have to come in at different periods of time and put some attention to the work. This wasn't a full time job. I had to pay mortgages and pay wages, so I've had to do other jobs. But it was always when I was dedicating more time to the project where I would see things and experience things. And again, I am religious, but I'm also extremely skeptical as well. And I would see this woman hanging from the landing, and I thought nothing of it. And I think a week before I left for America to do the last interviews in America in March this year, my wife was suffering from, a little bit of, she was a little bit down, and she was saying stuff to me like, I just pictured myself like throwing myself off this landing and hanging myself and stuff, and it was all this weird stuff that was starting to creep in. I also have a dog, a Labrador dog, who is starting to, and you always say pet, so he's see things that humans can't see, and the Labrador started to get extremely protective of me, and there'd be situations where I'd be on the couch watching TV, and he'd see something in the room, and he would actually jump on top of me and pin me down as if protecting me, like a shield, like a shield from whatever the aggression is that he sees. And it was all this weird stuff that was happening. You've just got to plow on. And I only revealed to my wife recently that I was seeing the same thing, but it wasn't you. It was just a woman. I never knew it was. She was seeing herself hanging from there. It was weird. It was weird stuff. It was very, very weird stuff. But I would tell you this now, and I've told another radio presenter as well a few months ago about this same story. But just to get things right. I am religious, but I'm not. I'm extremely skeptical as well about the stuff that I see and stuff that I experience. I have to be, particularly with this subject matter. There was a moment actually in the shower last year when I was really sort of in dire straits with the film and the story, and I was just in the shower and it was normal. I was just washing my hair and I just saw this. It was like a vision in a sense. And it was weird because as I was, can you imagine me just sort of like, washing my hair, I was playing this scene out, and the scene was, I was walking down this street in New York, very, very busy sort of corporate looking sort of area of New York. And as I was walking, there was people bumping into me, walking towards me. There was people bumping into me, walking behind me. It was like they were trying to bump me off the street. And it was weird, and it was continuous, and I was getting more aggressive, and I was getting a little bit more aggressive in my response. And through this crowd, I saw this really small, wiry framed priest, and it was Father Martin. And it was weird because as I was getting closer to him, he had a little slight smile on his face, and he just raised his hand out to me to shake my hand, and people were still bumping into me, and people were still trying to thwart me from getting to where I wanted to get to, which was Father Martin. And literally just before we touched hands, the sort of the vision vanished. And I am not I don't get these sort of visions very often, and I don't drink heavily, I don't do drugs, and you know what I'm trying to get at.
Yeah.
This is not something that I'm very former military, very sort of, this is what it is. And it was a very powerful moment. And what it was trying to tell me was tell the story that you believe should be told. And yeah, that's where we are now. So.
That's very remarkable. Well, and I understand why, because of the what you're trying to present in the film, why it is important for you not to make up the decision for the audience.
Yes.
To let the audience decide.
That's important. Yeah.
Yeah, but I don't mind saying that for myself personally. I have a very strong Christian supernatural worldview. Yeah. So I'll just tell you right now, Marty, I'm just going to pray for you. I'm going to pray for some protection for That's you. Good. Just, you've got a little bit of time left before this film is complete. So you've got my prayers, and I have no doubt that that there will be people in my audience praying for you too. So, there is probably, just as the sensation you've had in making this film, in the conducting of this very interview, I could think of 100 different other things that I would like to talk to you about, but I feel like I have probably kept you long enough. So what I want you to talk about before we wrap up, and this has been a remarkable discussion, tell us how we can keep track of your progress with this film and be notified when it is released. And are you expecting to release this theatrically, or how are you kind of anticipating all of that to play out?
So this is a feature documentary. So this is going to be a cinematic film. So this isn't straight to TV, straight to DVD kind of approach. It's excuse me. So we are. It's the old way of doing it. You get a feel for the film in the festivals. So our aim at the moment is to be specific, is to finish what we call picture lock end of July this year. So that's the whole visuals locked down in the film, and then we start to do the polish and the really, really powerful stuff, which is the sound design, the sound mix, and the score. So we're hoping to push it out to the major film festivals soon. Then we can sort of, get a feel for the response. not so much from the festival programmers, but from the public, which is important for me. You're going to get a lot of information from the social media pages. So we've got Twitter. Let me just get this right. But the Facebook page is Hostages to the Devil.
Okay.
That's going to give you all the details, basically, of rest. We're still early stages, but not as early as we were, for example, last year, for example. But we are really progressing quickly now to get this finished and get this out there. And the Twitter is at Father Malachi Martin, so it's at FR Malachi Martin if you want to follow us on Twitter. But I would say be patient. I'm sure there's going to be a trailer out soon, which I can't wait to put together with my fine editor and composer. So I would stick with, to be honest, we're better at Facebook than Twitter, to be totally honest. So I would stick with Facebook. I'm sure, and I think Ralph Sarchi shared a few of the links as well. So if you want to stick with, I would stick with Facebook, to be totally honest with you, and you can sort of track the film's progress from there.
Sure. And I will be sure to put the links to all of that in the show notes for the audience to follow you and follow the progress of this film. We look very much forward to seeing the film. And I would just ask, any new information that comes about, anything you want me to know when the trailer comes out, etc., just shoot me an email and I will apprise the audience of that information as well. It's been an absolute pleasure to talk to you, Marty, and I thank you so much for giving me your time today.
No problem at all. What I'll do for you, because you've been such a great host, I will, once the trailer's done, I'll come back on the show and do another program.
I would love that. Yeah. I would absolutely love that. Thank you so much, and God bless, and we will be looking forward to the film soon enough.
Great. Fingers crossed. See you soon. Bye-bye.
You've been listening to Beyond Extraordinary with Natalina. For the latest headlines and program schedule, please visit extraordinaryintelligence.com.